I'd like to thank you guys for coming out to SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D. Oops, something isn't right. So Melanie Gavura is our sales. So if you have any questions for that, she's going to be on the Q&A. I'm Steve Darcey, tech support guy, or pretty much technical application engineer out of Austin, Texas. And then we have Michael Nolte. He's out of Arizona, and he's going to be doing the Q&A portion. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, just type them in the QA and we'll take care of it. And then some of the QA we may cover at the very end. So real quickly, a little bit about us. GoEngineer, we provide design and manufacturing tools with expertise that enable customers to reduce the cost, risk, and time required to go live with new technology, ultimately new product introductions. So we have, SolidWorks is our main bread and butter, but we also do 3D scanning, 3D printing, and pretty much anything you need on the engineering side to get your products done quicker. We just recently purchased CATI. So we've got a new expanded territory, so pretty much just the entire U.S. What that means better for you guys is that we're East Coast to West Coast, and if you call tech support, and if you're on Central Time, then it's pretty much 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So pretty good hours for tech support on that. We do provide support and services, tech support, 3D printing training, and print a part as a service. So if you don't have your own 3D printer or scanner, then just let us know. We'll try and do it for you. All right. We do classroom training, online training. We have a lot of online resources, including our YouTube channel. And of course, we can train you in certification for all the SOLIDWORKS products that we carry. So some of the other services we do is hosting for your server side. We can also do rendering and animations, PDM implementations, including PDM to SOLIDWORKS Electrical implementations. And we can also help you guys with CAD automation. So enough of the GoEngineer stuff. Let's get right into the guts of Electrical 3D. So here we go. Start out on the electrical 2D side. So I have just a simple project, and this is pretty much part 4 of our 4-part series for harnesses. And so hopefully I'm not going to cover too much in depth here, but you can see I've got really just a simple sheet. It's got 3 connectors on it. Connectors got wires going to it, and then I've got some splices in here. So I have splice 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and they're going out again to the connector. So kind of what I'm doing is I'm just taking wire number 1, splitting it off. So I actually have 2 wires behind the splice. So 1 wire is going to go down to 1 connector on pin 1 on the other one, and connector 1 on the other, like J2. And just repeating that same scheme throughout. So, of course, once you're done, you group them all, add them to a harness, and then we'll go right over to the 3D side. So the cool thing is, if I have SOLIDWORKS going and I have the add-in turned on, I can open up the assembly straight from here. And when I do that, it will open up the project. You can see I've got the project loaded. The control is actually open on the 2D side, but I can see the schematic if I want on the 3D side as well for my viewer. And you can see I've got an assembly. I've got some parts. I've got my cool little Arduino Nano here with a little component on there for the connector. Got a little 9-volt battery. And then if you've seen some of the previous webinars, I have an EW path. So it's a 3D sketch path that's going out here. And pretty much, this is where I want the harness. If you're doing wires or cables, it's where any of those things are going to route from and to. So that's kind of my little cheating road. You think about Google Maps, and Google Maps only routes you on the road, hopefully, and that's kind of what we're doing, kind of giving it the road that we want to go down. So pretty simply, everything's from the 2D is kind of brought forth to the 3D, so all I have to do is say route harness, and I'm going to say use splines. I like splines. And then let's take a look at some things. So, the whole purpose of this is that I'm going to do a whole bunch of things wrong. I also want to reiterate, I'm running in SOLIDWORKS 2023, so I'm working on the pre-release of that. And it's been actually very stable. I've been quite pleased with this. All right, so let's take a look at this route harness. Before I do this, sometimes when I'm doing troubleshooting, I'll hit the Draw Graph button. And what that does, if you think about Google Maps, it's got to find, hundreds of different ways to go from A to B. And so that's kind of what this is doing, is it's finding all the different path routes that it can go from A to B. But in this case, I have two settings over here. One is the distance between the routing paths, and one is between the beginning part and the next routing path. So the initial start point and the next one. So if I make this a 2 and I say draw graph, then notice that now it actually connected these two up. So now I have a roadway, so it can actually find the connection paths between, this from connection to where it needs to go. So then we can kind of come down here and notice that it did this one, but it did not do this one. So I know I need to go a little bit further. So I have kind of two options. I could go back to the EW path and make it a little bit closer to this. So it really depends on how much control you actually want over the paths. So if I make this 2.5, and we draw the graph, now it's close enough to that, and it makes the connection, and we're good to go. And same thing, when we're doing the graph, it doesn't know whether the wires are going to go one direction or the other. So sometimes you'll see multiple locations, and then depending on which algorithms you use, so notice we have 3 different algorithms to choose from. When we hit the OK checkbox, sometimes it'll pick one path versus another. But for the most part, it's trying to pick the least possible path between the two connections that you're trying to create. Then now I've got them, everything looks good, it has paths to go through. I can delete the graph so I don't have to see it, and then I'm just going to hit OK. I'm going to keep the show errors on, just because that's what this webinar is about, is showing all the issues. So we'll give it a couple seconds, like 7 seconds, so that's pretty good. And let me go ahead and turn my sketches off. There we go. So we can kind of see that I've got my 4 wires coming out of the connector, going into my, there's a CW cable point. So they all go to the cable point, and then the cable point goes, up and around, starts going through the EW path. And it looks like everything's going pretty good. I've got a skinny wire. It's spliced and is going to 2 wires. So I got skinny to fat. So that's looking good. Again, skinny to fat, looking all right. Fat to skinny, that's not looking good. Okay, even though I'd like to be more fat to skinny. But then here we got skinny to fat. So and this is kind of what we're looking at, is I've got 1 wire in here and I've got 2 wires in there. And so the other connections all the way to the end connectors look pretty good. So I'm happy with that. And the splines look pretty nice between those two. So a couple things we need to look at. One of the first things is, if I open up just this splice, is some things I want to kind of point out. One is it's got 2 C points, 2 connection points. So, the direction that it's going and then how far out it's going to go. And then we also have a route point. And so notice that the route point is at the very center of the part. And there's another little sneaky thing, is that you also need if you run this through the routing library manager or the electrical component manager, then it will add this component type equals a splice. So that's something that you may need to make sure that you have set up. Also, type cat part may actually be added as well. And so some of these are little things that you need in the catalog and in the part to make sure that it works the right time. The other thing that I did is I put a little red marker on here. So even though you may buy it and it doesn't have the red marker, I like to put some kind of a marking on there so I know which direction is my 1. So I'm going to say this is going to be 1 coming in and 2 going out. And so that way I know the direction of the orientation of these things. Okay. All right, so we'll close out of this. And you can kind of see this one actually kind of did right. I got one green wire, and then there's two wires in here, so the color is going to be neutral. It's not going to show green and orange, or whatever the two colors are, or two greens, because the wires may be a little bit off there. So one thing we need to do is take a look at what's on the 2D to make sure that this thing works right on the 3D. And that's kind of the whole thing, is make sure your 2D's right. All right. So notice that on the splices, I got splice 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, I got this from somebody else, and sometimes you may actually get other things from other people. So you got to be careful as far as how they manipulated this and how the symbols are created and stuff. Now, I can do something sneaky, and that's kind of what I did, is I went ahead and reoriented these two. And I can right-click and do this orientation and do invert. But there's going to be an issue with doing this, okay? And I did it with all 4 of them. And I'm doing this on purpose because sometimes you guys may run into this. And if you do, you'll now know why, okay? So it looks good in 2D. It seems like, oh yeah, I've got 1 over here and 2 over here. But the invert is really just supposed to be used for terminals, not really for splices. So if I wanted to do it correctly, I should actually have a separate splice that has 1 and 2 on the proper ways. So main thing, try not to use this invert button when you're doing splices. Okay, so let's see what it does. Let's just delete that. It's all gone. That's okay. We're going to route harnesses. We're going to route it. Wait 7 seconds. There we go. And notice I've got, skinny to fat, or small to large, whatever you want to call it. And notice that on my 3rd one now, it's looking good. I got small to large, and then small to large. So everything looks like it's doing pretty good. Looks like it's happy. Everything's fine. But there's a couple things. I know that I've got an issue here because it's gray. So something weird is going on. And also, if I zoom in there, notice that I've got this little, I'm not sure what that is, but it's there, and that's not supposed to be there. So something weird is kind of going on in here. And so sometimes we got to dig down a little bit and figure out what more is going on. So SOLIDWORKS gives us the tools to do that. So I'm going to edit the route. Just right-click any part of that, edit route. And there's a couple things we can do. I know that there's 4 wires going through here. We can check this by right-click and just go to Electrical Attributes. Then now it lists the 4 different wires that are in here. And notice that I got little exclamation points on here. So the exclamation points mean something's wrong. It may be kind of okay, but we need to probably double check it. Okay. And if we go way down here at the end, before it goes off to these 2, these guys have a bunch of wires in there. So if I right-click Electrical Attributes, notice that I've got all the wires in here. And look, all these guys are good. And I can click on them and I can see where their locations are going from and where they're going to. So this guy is going from this guy all the way up to the front. Wire number 2 here is going from this guy all the way to the front. So those 2 are looking good. In fact, all these other ones are really looking good. Okay. Another way to view these are to just do the Edit Wires button. So if you go to the Electrical tab, say Edit Wires, then you'll see this is going to be a list of all of the wires, okay, including some of my bad ones here. So notice I can, again, select on them and I can see where they're going from, where they're going to. And go all the way down here. And then when we get down to the very end, where this connection is, you can kind of see what's going to go on. Let me zoom in just a little bit better. There we go. This thing is actually going around to the wrong end of the C point, the connection point on there. Okay, I got the orientation of the 3D model correct, but the C point number 2, it's actually looping back around, and that's probably why I'm getting that little edge there. And if I click on this one, he's kind of doing the same thing. He's going around to the back side. This guy's going around the back side, and the other one's going around the back side. And again, this could be fixed if I fixed it in the 2D and used the right. Main thing is don't use the orient to flip it. Okay. Now, if I decide, you know what, the 2D, I'm just going to leave it, I don't want to mess with it, I can fix it in the 3D, okay? So I can select on it, hit select path, and you'll see each of these individual line segments are the different segments that this thing needs to go through. So for the most part, I don't need the last two. I could delete them straight out here. So you just hit delete, get rid of them. And I need to make sure that it goes through this line, through that C point. And I say OK. And notice that his error message kind of goes away there. So again, I can do this pretty quick. I can also, instead of selecting them out there, if I don't know which ones they are, then I can unpick and then pick. And I'm really unpicking just by selecting it again. So the same kind of thing. Just pick it, and it goes away. So if I pick it once, it adds it. If I pick it again, it goes away. So that looks good. And we'll do one more. So now all my wires look fairly decent. Okay, and we can dig a little bit deeper. If you scroll down here to the bottom, there's more options for the properties of the wires and some additional properties. And at the very bottom, there's a More Properties button. And this is actually what we pull in from 2D. This is your From To list. So it gives me all your different wires, the lengths of the wire, the gauge of the wires. So there's occasions where you may have to come in here and look and make sure that the OD of the wires and the gauge and the bend radiuses are all coming in to make sure that everything works correctly, you know, on the 3D side. So if it's not in 2D, then we don't have access to it on the 3D. So you got to make sure it's good on the 2D side. So this can be used as just a little check. You can kind of see your little from and to. You could override if one of the pins is in the wrong. Then I can hit the little drop down. Notice I've got 2 pins on that guy. This is on the splice. And I can also change the component if I need to. Okay. I don't want to do that. Maybe on the connectors, you can kind of see I've got connectors and I've got my 4 pins on the connectors. So I do have options to change these. Please don't, because really all this information should be coming from the 2D. And you should adjust the 2D, and then once you import the harness, you know, route the harness, then this will update from the 2D side. But there have been some slight occasions where I've gone in, I just needed to make an adjustment on one, and you can kind of get to this chart if you need to. And for the most part, I just use it for troubleshooting. So it works out pretty good. All right, one thing you may want to do, occasionally if you have, some of these are like a twisted pair, you know, coming out of here is actually 2 different wires there. And it looks like I messed this one up. Let me reselect that path. I think I hit undo on there. Let me hit OK out here just to make sure that it's good. All right, yeah, and see I get orange, I get green here. Red, and then, or dark red, light red. All right, but one other thing that I wanted to show is that we do have twisted pairs. So if I select on 2 entities here, I can do a twisted pair. And then when I do the twisted pair, it'll tell me how many twists per, say for instance, inch. And then it will automatically add that to the length of the wire. Okay, I'm not going to do it on this, but I just want to show you that it is there. It is available. All right, and that's your edit wires. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Everything's looking all right. Got all my small wires to my big wires. So those are all nice and fixed. And then let's take a look at some, let me get to the top level. And in my electrical library, routing electrical, I have some little clips. So I'm going to drag and drop a clip in, and I've got make references, so it attaches to these little holes. And before I drop it, so I'm still holding down my left mouse button, I can hold down Shift and use the arrow key, and you can see I can rotate it. I think it's like 15-degree segments or something like that. So I'm going to drop it in there like that. It has multiple configurations, so I think my wire is about that size, so we'll say OK to that. And this this clip is at the top level of my assembly, so I just kind of want you to keep an eye on this and how it works and stuff. All right, so then I think, okay, well, I want to route this thing, and it's way up off the ground there. So I want to route it through the clip. So pretty easy. Just right click, edit the route. We've got a button that says route through clip. So I pick on the clip axis there, and then I want to route this segment, and we'll say okay. And then I start looking at that, and I'm like, oh, that's not going to be good at all. You know, kind of expected the whole thing to go down, but the software is only going to do what you tell it to do. So it said, oh, well, all this other stuff probably has constraints and things like that. So I'm doing that. I'm routing it through the clip. So this is not maybe the best way to do it. So we probably need to kind of look at our EW path first, and then go around and fix it and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. Another thing that we can do in our editing of the sketch, right, the route, and I'll show this a little bit more later too, is that each individual segment we can show this sketcher triad, and then I can manually drag it around, you know, as needed. And so each individual point can be, you can also delete and add segments, but again, be careful, because if I do delete a line and then add a line, then I gotta go back and check my wires and make sure they're routing through the right direction. Okay. All right, so I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to fix this. So maybe I want all these wires to go down. So I'm going to really just go delete this, and I'm going to mess with my EW path. My EW path actually has some references to the heights of how I place these splices. So first off, let me go edit one of these mates. There we go. We're going to edit this guy, and we're going to put him really close to the bottom of this thing. So let's make it see if 125 looks good. So if I zoom in there, that splice looks like it's about the same height as the center of that. So that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. And I've got all the splices set up to where they all are at the same height. So I just change one, it modifies and updates all the other ones. Once I do that, I need to check and make sure. You can see I've got an error on my EW path, so let's edit that. And I've probably got, you can kind of see the ends of these are all stuck to the EW paths on the splices. So I'm going to get rid of this coincident relationship. There we go. And then let's just draw a line. Maybe I want to go from there straight down, and then maybe over a little bit. In fact, I'm going to make this one kind of a little bit sideways. Like that. And let me look at the top view. And I want to kind of line this up with the origin. Just kind of make sure that it's kind of going, you know, close through that right there. That should look pretty good. And I could give it dimensions and stuff if I want to, but let's see what it does. So finish out of the sketch. This is the EW path. It's nice and healthy again, so I don't get any error messages on that. And then let's try and edit the route. All right, so it's looking pretty good. I was actually hoping to get an error in here, but it looks like it's fixed pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and try and do something real quick. I'm going to make this really small. There we go. And there's occasions where you may get this colorful, kind of like a Beetlejuice snake looking thing. And really what this is telling you that your bend radius is too small. So if you start crimping the wire or something like that, this is going to be bad for the wire. So in this case, I have a tangent, a spline handle, so I can adjust that curvature, you know, and kind of smooth it out if I need to. And same thing, I've got other curvature handles, so if I need to do the sketcher triad, move this up a little bit. And we can hide it. And then you can also drag these in and move them around as well. So, you want to make sure that you have nice smooth contours, so that way everything is working. All right, and then once I have this, now it's really close to this, so I can go in and use my edit route through clips. And if I pick my clip and then my route, you'll see it jog over just a little bit, and that looks way better than anything else. Okay. Now, I'm editing the 3D sketch, so maybe I want to drag a clip in. And again, I'll use the shift and the arrows to flip it around. And let's go ahead and put in 2 more. All right, so looking pretty good. And then I do need to make sure that I route through the clips. Okay, so route. See it jog just a little bit. I'm going to thumbtack this because I'm going to use it a couple of times. And I probably use some right-click OK. You don't have to move my mouse all the way over. All right, so now those are actually routed through the clips. Now, even though they look like it, I do need to make sure I use route through clips, because when I would do a flatten, I want to make sure that the clips go ahead and flatten with it. If I do need to move some of these, I can. I can kind of jog them around, make it look a little bit more realistic. As the wire bundle's coming out from 8 wires in here to 4 in this direction, 4 in this direction. Okay. So that's all looking pretty good. Finish out of the sketch. Again, I rerouted, so I do have my little error. Again, I should need to go fix that on the 2D side, and then that will automatically update and fix on the 3D side. But we're going to keep on going with this. All right, with that, I'm going to finish out of the routing. So hopefully that gave you a couple good little techniques to troubleshoot some of the routes and some of the wires and all that. So next I'm going to go right into doing a flattened route. I'm just going to select on it, right-click flatten route. And I do have some extra little loops on there. Those were the backward ends. I'm going to go ahead and accept them. And we have 2 different options. We have annotation and manufacture. I've got a slide a little bit later. I'll talk about these. Annotation is really just going to show you individual line segments. In fact, I'll go ahead and do one real quick, just so you can see it. And I'm not going to worry about the clips or anything like that. But I do want the connectors. There we go. And kind of what it's going to do, it's not super realistic. You can kind of see everything is nice and straight leg. And if I would have checked the button for the annotations, then I would have got the links of each of the individual wires and stuff. Okay. But the issue is that if you're going to do nail board views or anything like that, then we need to go to a manufacturer route. So I'm going to go back to my regular route. It's got my different heights and everything on there. And I'm going to do a flatten route again. This one's going to be manufacturer. And for the flatten parameters, I'm going to select all of these segments that I select are going to be horizontal. So especially if you're doing a very large harness, then try and pick all the individual spline segments that you want to flatten out and be straight, because that will save you a lot of time when you're trying to do edit flatten route. So all of those segments right there, it's going to be a horizontal line or a couple horizontal lines. And then I do want a foam board option, so when I print it out, it's going to be true to scale. So I'm going to say this is probably 72 by 48, something like that. And then I do want it to flatten the clips. I do want it to show the lengths and the 3D connectors. All right, and I'll worry about the drawings in just a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And there's a lot of math involved here, so it actually did this fairly quick. You'll see I get all the little tags for the dimensions. That's looking pretty good. And then I've got my my different splices, and I've got a little connection saying, hey, this wire goes to that end of the splice. So you can leave it like that if you want, or we can do a little bit of cleanup, which I'll show you in just a bit. So everything's looking good. Notice that the clips do come with it. These were the 3 that I actually put in with the route. So you do have to be kind of cautious as far as whether it's at the very top level of the assembly or whether it's in the actual route for them to flatten. Okay. If I want to straighten this up so it fits on the sheet of paper a little better, we do have the option to edit the flattened route. And so I'm going to select on different route segments. So a couple things we can do. If I select on a segment, I do have the option to try and make it horizontal or vertical. And click on that. And I'm going to say horizontal. And it's going to try and make that horizontal. I may need to flip it. Or if I want to do just adjust the angle, this one is a little bit easier. I'm going to adjust the angle and then use this horizontal here. There we go. And it only did it for that segment. And you have to do each individual segment at a time. So I'm going to say apply to that. So if I also want to do it on this one, then I need to select it. Now this is horizontal. Okay. So now that's looking nice and straight. If I did want to jog in it, I can select on it. I'm going to undo that. And then I can just grab this wheel and drag it. So if I do want it to be, you know, a certain angle out, or maybe I want it straight down. And make sure you hit apply. Same thing, I'm going to maybe make this one kind of close to straight up. That way when I do my nail board view, they've got, you know, something they can actually go around and then back up. And if I really wanted to look good, I'd spend some time, make this all vertical, make all this horizontal on these splines. So I'm going to do a couple kind of cool things with these. So notice I can rotate these around as well. And then we'll move this segment around. So I have seen some companies do something similar to this. So I got to kind of point it kind of close to that thing. And all you're trying to do is say, yeah, these are connected like that. And then if you want to get real crazy with it, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this one up a little bit, but I'm going to insert, so let me actually move it up just a little bit. Around in there. And same thing, I'm going to kind of move this one closer. And like that. And then we can insert, there's a button for add bend. So when I pick on that, then when I drag it around, I'm actually adding a bend in that segment. Oops, let me drag that out of there just a bit. There we go. All right, and same kind of thing, I can select on, I've got add bend on. So I'm going to pick on this guy. And I should have picked a little bit lower down there. But hopefully you get the point on that. So now it looks a lot more realistic, you know, as far as the where the spline is. And of course I got my length segments on there, so I know exactly what the lengths are. All right, so just for fun, I'll just do 2 more quick angles on these guys. just to kind of get them a little closer. More. You see it picked up the last angle from the last one, so that's helpful. A lot of times if you're doing, 10 of the same thing. All right, so the main thing is that you're trying to get the this thing nice so it fits on the sheet of paper. And then once you do have a button for Create Drawing. I'm going to use a D-size landscape, and I'll just check all the boxes and hit OK. See where it goes. So it says I didn't have a length field for my bill of materials, so I'm going to add that. So that looks pretty good. We do have, here's our bill of material. I'll zoom into that. A couple quick little techniques for the tables themselves. So I'm going to drag these out to where I have pretty much one line. If I drag the bottom, I can hold down Shift, and when I drop it, then it'll make it the same height for all of these. So that looks pretty good. You can see I've got a lot of the different wires, and the nice thing on the bill of material is that I can drag these. So maybe I want my splices up at the top, so I can just grab that row and drag it. So now the splices are number 1. Maybe I actually want my clips to be up at the top too. So there's 3 clips. And we'll put the housing down here. So again, it's very simple to just drag and drop these around. And the rest are all the wires with the wire links. And then let's go over to the, this is called the circuit summary. And for the most part, it is your from to list. Same kind of thing, I'll drag it out. And once you have the size of these, you can save this table out as a table template. And then I could select this table template and it'll be good to go for the next time. So you can kind of see on this circuit summary, I've got my part names, my conductors, my colors, the wires, the lengths. So when it's going from this component to the other component, then you can kind of see that it's got two colors in there. So really good use there. All right, same thing when I come close to one of these connectors. This is kind of like the circuit summary for the connectors themselves. I like to make those a little cleaner looking. And then we have individual balloons for each of the different items that are out here. Some of the balloons that actually put them on a magnet line. So if you don't want them on a magnet line, you can drag them and pull them off. Pretty simple and easy to do. Maybe I want a couple of these off of there. We'll move these circuits. This one's for this guy. So even though a lot of it is automated, I mean the drawing took me 2 clicks, you still got to do a little bit of cleanup. But not bad at all. So that looks pretty good. And really what I wanted to do is put some of these wires, or the balloons, on a magnet line here. Before I do the magnet line though, I do want to switch these to where they go down. So we have a lot of different options to make sure that this thing looks nice and clean. And really that's what you want is, you don't want the guy in the shop to come ask you questions. So the more information we can give him, the better. And of course you want it to look professional. So I'll put a little magnet line, grab all the balloons, bring them all up, and that looks pretty good. So there's a couple different ways in which you can do, there's more options that you do have, and I wanted to save a couple of them. Because if you go out to mysolidworks.com, I've got some QR codes. So I'll leave this up for just a little while, guys. And you do have to log in to mysolidworks.com. If you already have SolidWorks, then you do have access to these. So they are included with your subscription and your purchasing of the product. And so this gives you more information. It's a good tutorial for manufacturing flattened views and the annotation flattened views. So they'll give you all the nice little, yeah, I kind of gave you a nice little, kind of a quick tutorial, whereas these are a lot more in depth. So pretty good stuff. All right, with that, want to thank you guys for coming out. We're going to go ahead and end it a little bit early. So we'll do some Q&A. I'll check the Q&A in just a bit. But again, just want to thank you for coming out to the webinar for Electrical 3D. Oops, something isn't right. So hopefully you got some good different ways in which you can kind of research and figure out, you know, what's going on with your 3D routes and different techniques to fix those. So I've got some information on how to get in touch with Melanie if you have any sales questions, me or Michael for any of the tech questions. So thanks for coming out, guys.